Good morning and welcome to another Ovadia Heart Health Telemedicine live stream. Today I'm thrilled to have as a guest Dr. Roshani Sanghani. Um, I have been a real big fan of Dr. Sanghani since I heard her present a grand rounds for the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners on the subject of motivational interviewing, and that was back in 2023. And I've now just become an even bigger fan after watching her presentations at the Low Carb USA symposiums and getting and reading her book, which is amazing. It's just a jam-packed book full of information, inspirational information, and it's on the cover. It says, "Turnaround Diabetes: the step-by-step guide to navigating type 2 and type 1 diabetes with less medication." And it's really a guide to better health that goes far beyond diabetes. It would really help anyone who's struggling with metabolic disease, and it helps understand how people can implement these things into their lives. I'm just going to say a few things about Dr. Sanghani before we start. First of all, I'm Chris Cornell, a certified health coach here at Ovadia Heart Health, and I am just thrilled to have the opportunity to talk to Dr. Sanghani. She's a board-certified endocrinologist, founder of Vasan Health Solutions in Mumbai, and the author of the book Turnaround Diabetes. Her work combines the best of evidence-based medicine with a deeply human-centered care, including powerful techniques that we'll be talking about today involving motivational interviewing. I first heard her at the Grand Round that the SMHP provided a couple years ago, and I was instantly hooked. At the time, I wasn't even thinking about becoming a health coach, but her clarity, her compassion and depth of understanding of this subject really stuck with me, and I've re-listened to that presentation since becoming a certified master health coach and working in Dr. Ovadia's practice. So with that out of the way, I need to put up our medical disclaimer, and then we'll get on with this live stream. Any services or information provided by Spell Health, doing business as iFix Hearts, in, all this is educational and informational purposes only. This is not a substitute for professional advice or treatment. If you have any questions, seek the care of a qualified doctor or medical professional, especially when undertaking any changes to nutrition, diet, or fitness. And if you'd like to get in touch with anyone at our Ovadia Heart Health, you can email us at team@ifixhearts.com. And with that, we will get that off the screen. And Dr. Sanghani, I don't even know where to begin. You have so much information, so much great things that you've put out, and I am looking forward to hearing your presentation this August at the Symposium for Metabolic Health in San Diego, California. That's August 14th to 17th. And maybe I'll just start off asking you a little bit about motivational interviewing, and then I'll kind of let you take the conversation wherever it goes. But what inspired you, first of all, to focus on the importance of motivational interviewing, since that's what really resonated with me and got me interested in your work?
Sure. Thank you, Chris. It's so fun to be here with all of you. I first got introduced to motivational interviewing by accident. This would be in the year almost 20 years ago, actually, about 2005, 2006, when I was just about starting to be a chief medical resident at Cook County Hospital in Chicago, which is the hospital that's famous because of the TV show ER. And we trained there, and it was an amazing time. And one of my teachers there said, you're going in to be a chief resident. I'm nominating you to go to this addiction substance abuse training course out in Cape Cod. And all the incoming chiefs of the country, across the country, like top few, had been nominated to go for this. It was a real privilege and honor to go. And the entire workshop, it was about 3 days, was about how do you help doctors work with patients who struggle with addiction. And addiction back then, 20 years ago, was strictly about cigarettes, drugs, alcohol. And that's where motivational interviewing originated. It was something designed for maybe, unfortunately, they were defined as society's most difficult patients because they were addicts. And it was more difficult to work with someone who was addicted to something and didn't look like they wanted to give up their addiction. And the founders of motivational interviewing realized that everybody wants to thrive, everybody wants to do well, even if they look like they have an addiction. There's a part of them that is trying to do well, and this seems to be the best they can do right now. So they developed this coaching or talking style. And I have to say why they chose the word interviewing. They used the word interviewing because a journalist could interview a expert in any authority field, and it would be a, there could be a power dynamic that one person is smaller or bigger than the other, but it could also be that a bigger, larger than life person is interviewing somebody else. So the power dynamic in an interview is not clear. It's not clear who's interviewing, who's being interviewed, and they might just be equals and there's a conversation happening rather than interrogation, which is, a powerful authority figure talking down at somebody who is expected to answer questions. And you could be a basic intern, interviewing your boss for tips or for guidance, like, help me do this. So there was no clarity. They purposely kept it like that so that there was no power struggle. And the word motivational was to say there is motivation inside each person, and our job is to bring that motivation forth. You don't have to install motivation in somebody. It's already there, and our job is to help them find it, because once they find their internal motivation, they'll be able to do this long term. This is for areas of healthcare that don't get fixed by antibiotics or surgery. This is for chronic things, long term, where getting better depends a lot on what the patient does when the patient leaves the room, and depends very little on what the doctor's doing inside that consultation, except talking or listening better.
This subject really fascinates me, and I'm very interested when you say everyone wants to thrive. Um, I believe that. But how does motivational interviewing help bring that inner desire to the surface, especially in people who seem stuck, resistant, or overwhelmed, unable apparently to change? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so let's take an example, right? I work every day with people with diabetes or with struggling with overweight, obesity, and a lot of times they struggle with their relationship with food. It's a common enough example we can use. And let's say somebody says, I have a sweet tooth and I just cannot resist. Now, the judgmental doctor in me might just have a sarcastic answer as well. What do you want me to do about that? All I can do is prescribe you medicine then if you're going to keep your addiction, right? That would be very hard. It sounds harsh even when you say it like that. Versus, okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about your relationship with sugar. I'm curious to know what that's like. So an open-ended, space where I'm not poking at them for their relationship with sugar, but I'm inviting conversation. And they may say that, I quit smoking and now it's sugar instead, and I've gained 15 pounds ever since I quit smoking. Now, there's another opportunity for me here is to say, oh, you quit smoking. So I can affirm their success, a past success, that they've already achieved something very difficult. And they've clearly done that for their own health and for their own self-care. So you start with open-ended questions to get a bit more information. You might hear them say something like, it helps me at the end of a day when I don't want to lose my temper on my kids when I get home from work, or it helps me manage my stressful work environment. And okay, so then I'm hearing that doing well at work matters to you. You don't want to lose your things or lose your presence at work. You also care about being a good parent when you come home from a tiring day. You don't want to dump it out all on your kids. So being a good parent matters to you as well. So we're listening below the surface for what looks like stuck behavior, that they're just attached to sugar. And if you think about an iceberg, that most of the iceberg is below the water, what's below the water in this attachment to sugar, that something is, it's helping them in some way. So we need to help them get in touch with that and not feel so guilty or bad about it.
I'm curious, as I went through the Primal Health Master Coach course to get my master certification, um, they talked a lot. It was a great program, and they talked a lot about motivational interviewing. And I found that after using some of these principles to help clients, we were doing a lot of role playing at the time. I've since now been working with Ovadia Health for like 5 months and coaching clients on a regular basis. But when I was first starting out, I found that the role playing helped me with my own journey. Is that
Mhm.
something that you've seen? Because I all of a sudden started treating myself differently. Um, and then I will also say it spilled over to relationships in my family where um, I feel like I'm relatively empathetic towards strangers, towards others, but with my own siblings, like my brother who has type 2 diabetes, I found over the years, I learned after going through this course and listening to your presentation again, that I probably wasn't treating my own family members with the same level of openness and I was more judgmental. So I would like to get your thoughts on those couple of questions.
Yeah, a lot there. So I think it's always hardest to be professional with our own family, our own loved ones, because we've known them from a time when we were not even a professional. We've known them since we were kids. We've known them where there are no professional boundaries and there are emotions involved. So it's very hard to remove ourselves from that and be a healthcare provider to our own loved ones. It's hard to remain objective. There's a lot of subjectivity, a lot of past emotional things going on. Maybe I'm not able to role play as a healthcare provider. Maybe they're not able to see me as a healthcare provider because I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a wife, I'm a mom. Same, I go through the same thing that you mentioned. Um, and at the same time, I agree with what you said before. That is, I don't think I could have been this type of listening, empathic healer or helper until I had given myself that own empathy, that own listening or compassion for my own flaws, for my own struggles. When we can accept that we ourselves have issues, and that we have vulnerabilities, it makes it easier to see and respect the other. And same, it's no longer, I'm expecting you to be perfect. I get it that this is a journey. It can be messy sometimes. And when we give ourselves that grace, we can probably offer it more easily to others as well.
Now, do you have any advice for an individual who's in the mainstream medicine or nutrition space, and they're not getting the compassion and the style of care that you describe with your motivational interviewing? Um, any suggestions for how an individual can break free from that model?
That model of coaching or that model of treating?
Yeah, that model of treating, like
Yeah,
how can someone get help for themselves
yeah,
if they're interested in looking for it?
yeah. So I would use the same concept on them. Is this is a coach who wants to be a good coach. This is a nutritionist or dietitian who wants to help their patients succeed. That's why they entered the helping profession. So there is a part of them I can ask is, how's it going for you? When you use this particular technique, does it always work? Do you face any difficulties? Is there an area that you find that you hit some roadblocks at any point? And how does that make you feel? And a lot of times, if they're self-aware, they'll share how they don't like hitting resistance with the client. They don't like it when they feel like the client is being stubborn or being difficult. And if I could talk to them about, well, how important is it for you to be able to help this person take ownership of what it is that you want them to do? Would that be important for you? And how important is that on a scale of 1 to 10? How might you rate that? That 1 is it's not at all important for this client to take ownership. 10 on 10 is it's maximally important that this client takes ownership because I cannot solve this for them. And that's where it starts, is you tap into their motivation.
I've heard you say that even 5 minutes of truly empathetic listening can shift the trajectory of a patient's outcome. Why is that so often overlooked, and what can health professionals do to reframe how they use that 5 minutes?
Mm-hmm. If you only have 5 minutes, the data shows that whatever percentage of time is who spends the time talking about change is going to determine the outcome after the client leaves the room. For example, if I'm talking to Chris about something that Chris is working on and I'm the helper and Chris has come in for help, if I'm the one doing most of the talking for change versus Chris is the one talking in that meeting about change, more likely that Chris would change if he was the one talking about change in those 5 minutes.
Oh, so important. Um, let's switch over to the book for a little bit. I also want to get to the what you're going to be doing at the symposium in August, which I know a lot of people are really looking forward to. But let me just I'll make myself bigger on the screen again so I can show your book, because I thoroughly recommend it. You've got uh, great reviews, great plugs from people like Dr. Jason Fung. You've got let's see. There's so many people saying good things about it. I want you to tell me, you know, a little bit about the book, or a lot, um, who you wrote it for, and why you think it's important, and how it's helping. And we can talk about anything in there that you want to bring up.
Sure, Chris, thank you for that. I dedicated the book to people with diabetes who would have turned it around if only they knew how, and to everybody who has decided to turn it around now. And what I mean by turnaround is the word remission, reversal, it gets twisted sometimes. And I also felt like the type 1 diabetes audience was getting missed out whenever the word diabetes was being used. So I wanted to make sure they're included. And then it's not about maybe a reversal or a cure, but can you turn it around from being this chronic, progressive, downhill, more medicine burden? What's in our hands? And I like talking in terms of analogies. So on the cover, you see 4 circular little icons. Those are metaphors for 4 wheels of a car. And I talk about a lifestyle car that is moving down the road of life. And the analogies kind of then stick is a flat tire in any car would stop your car in the middle of the road. We hear a lot of people talking about fasting. So fasting is not one of the 4 wheels. The 4 wheels are nutrition, sleep, stress management, exercise, in that order. So a lot of times people with diabetes or overweight, they're told by the calories in, calories out model, eat less, move more. So we're telling them to fix the first wheel and go straight to the 4th wheel. I just found over time that people who were not sleeping well, they didn't have the brain bandwidth to make decisions the next day, whether it was about going to work out or have energy to work out. They just weren't rested. They weren't recovering from their workouts. And people who were stressed were also finding it very hard to show up for themselves, whether it was in the field of nutrition or in the field of getting in that gym or working out at home. The stress management was sometimes blocking self-care habits. And if you're just low on motivation, low on energy, and I'm telling you to exercise, it just somehow makes the client feel really guilty and bad about it. They know they should exercise, but they don't. And that just becomes a stuck area. So by ordering it this way, fixing nutrition, we know going low carb gives you bounds of energy. It rolls over into better sleep and better mood automatically. We know about metabolic psychiatry, how nutrition can help sleep and stress as well. When you're sleeping better, you're less likely to be craving things the next day. So you start having cumulative benefits. If you fix nutrition and then fix sleep, you're going to have less nighttime cravings. You're going to sleep more deeply. You're going to have more daytime freshness to battle the difficulties of life and the stressors that come your way. And maybe you don't need food as your clutch as much as before. And then it comes to exercise. Fifth comes fasting. Once your four wheels are okay, if you still have some journey left in your diabetes turnaround, we can add intermittent fasting under medical supervision, because if you're on medication, you need someone looking over these things. And that's kind of the first big chunk of the book is about these big five lifestyle areas. Second part of the book is about specific populations, women, kids, type 1 diabetes, hospitals. What do you do when you're in the hospital? How do you talk to your doctor about this? How do you protect your organs, like your ears, not your ears, your eyes, your kidney, your feet, your heart? And definitely there's a section about medications and blood tests. So you know what the doctor is doing, you know what to expect from the meeting. And then the final chapter is going forward. How do you do this as a long-term way of life and not be a crash diet? So in brief, what I've done is, instead of just telling people what to do, that could have been a 5-page book. Just fix all the 5 things and it's 5 pages. Why is the book so big? Is because I've taken all the possible problems that you can encounter, all the challenges that you can face when you try to go low carb, when you try to increase protein. I work with a lot of Indians. We have a lot of vegetarianism. So getting protein is something we have to be super conscious about. What are the problems you might face doing that? So it's all about troubleshooting. It's a manual. It's a mechanics manual.
So it sounds like very much your belief is that there's not a one size fits all, that individual treatment designed for the individual is important. And there's, of course, patterns that keep recurring. And, there's certain things, the way you broke it up into the 4 wheels. Clearly, everyone has to address those, but not necessarily in exactly the same way. If you, I think that probably everybody that's listening has someone in their life who is suffering from something. If you look around, more people who are struggling with metabolic disease than aren't. Um, what kind of advice would you give to help get someone on the right path if they're interested already in improving their health? I greatly appreciate all the stuff you said about motivational interviewing. Is there anything that the individual can do themselves to increase their chance of succeeding?
You mean without their doctor getting involved?
No, just we hear the statistics about failure to sustain lifestyle. You hear it all the time from mainstream medicine. And I always am curious when I'm interviewing doctors,
Yeah.
and it sounds like you've already given me a lot of really good, um, things that someone can do, both as the individual and someone that's trying to help someone else get help. But I just
Mm-hmm.
continue to be hooked on this idea that there are certain things that successful people end up doing that the
Yeah.
failures, as I hate to describe a person as a failure, but the failed attempts, what is lacking for the people that
Mm-hmm.
can't put it together?
Perfect. Yeah, I understand the question now. So I think I do address that, Chris, is because I'm very interested in not just telling you all the perfect behaviors that we expect of you for you to do well, and if you don't do them, then too bad for you. No, what I do is there's actually a section in the book called "How Clean is Your Thought Diet?"
I
So
remember that.
yeah. So we have this big thing about eating clean and clean carbs or good carbs, but in the very next section after nutrition, I go into stress management. Wheel number 2 is stress management. Or no, sorry, stress management is wheel number 3. So in wheel number 3, I talk about this and I put, comparisons of self-limiting thoughts versus self-empowering thoughts. So people who are going to keep revolving in that same rut, often when they start looking at their own thought patterns, they'll find they might use language like, I always do this, I never do this. Now, that's not true. They're effectively lying to themselves if they say, I always do this and never, because you cannot really possibly tell me I always give in when I see sugar in front of me. That's not true. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You haven't seen how you might do it differently tomorrow. You could tell me that it was so in the past, but at this moment, you can do something that might make the future moment different. So people sometimes lose grip on this moment that they have to do something different, and they're in a story about the past or the future. So that's a big one, is to catch always and never. So I think successful people, they might journal their thoughts, they might monitor their thoughts. And because if we're not careful, we just get up and rinse, repeat, like it's that rinse, repeat cycle. You get up and the day hits you, you go through the same habits, and it's such a blur. You're not even aware that you're in this habit pattern of yours. So that's one, is mindfulness of always, never. The other is, like we keep using this example of sweet tooth. There really is no such thing as a sweet tooth. You don't taste with your teeth. So, but we pass this word around as though it's accurate. And these are also lies. Is I have a sugar weakness or I have a sweet tooth. You are disempowering yourself when you say that, and somebody else profits when you say that. You know, so what about if you said, I'm learning a balance between my sugar intake for pleasure and health. I'm finding my balance. That would be more authentic than putting yourself down. It also takes away this sense that you're not in control, or more that you're in charge, so that you don't feel out of control, or that there's this part of you that eats sugar and there's this part of you that wants diabetes to be better, and they both don't talk to each other. Like, parts of me are internally conflicted. Um, and a third example I could give you of, what changes. And here again, it comes to, if you've been there and walked the walk yourself, you know what this is about. If I think about my own fitness journey, I never exercised until the age of 33. And when I was 33, I was a busy young doctor and young working parent of two children below the age of 5. So I told myself that my reason for not exercising is because I'm a busy doctor and a busy mother. And I was going through mindfulness training at the time. So this was all about monitoring my own thoughts. And I was saying, oh, I don't have time because. So I was using this, it was like I could hear my excuse. And so I changed it from being self-limiting, because that brings me down, right? I don't have time, versus I am a fit, busy doctor and mother. I changed the statement altogether. And sort of miraculously, what changed in my life was, it was the same busy life. I showed up in the same busy day. And I think I write about this in my book. I was saying this in my head, like just like a new chant sentence is, I'm a fit, busy doctor. I'm a fit, busy mother. And I was standing at the first floor, entry level of the hospital, waiting for the elevator to start my morning rounds. And the elevator was taking a really long time. It was like rush hour in the doctor's elevator. And here I am going, I'm a busy, fit mother, busy, fit doctor. Well, busy, fit people don't have time to waste waiting for an elevator. They take the stairs. And suddenly the staircase that had been there all along, 16-floor hospital building, I started taking the stairs up. It was the same staircase and same elevator, but by flipping the sentences from self-limiting to self-empowering, solutions became available to me. So these
That
are
is
some ways.
fascinating. I'm noticing some parallels. Um, when I was going through the training with Primal Health Institute, uh, I I was learning some of those same things, and I remember. Well, first of all, the transformation that happens when you start to realize that you have this potential that you can tap in and you can be successful in one area that you never thought possible before, it can spill over into other areas of your life in a positive way. Like for me, I sustainably lost 80 pounds of fat, and now I've kept it off for 7 years. Um, and it started to occur to me, like, I never thought that I could achieve that, and I had definitely got into the mindset of, I'm always going to be out of shape. I'm on the the back half of my life. It's just going to be the way it is. And then once I succeeded in that, I started doing things like running more. I ran my first marathon at age 58, And all of a sudden my eyes opened and I was like, well, there's so many things that are possible. And now I've surrounded myself with people that have similar mindsets, and it's possible all over the place. I, uh, I really appreciate that. And let's see, I wanna talk about, um, let's see, tell me a little bit more about the diabetes patients that you work with. I know that you've described yourself as an insulin tailor. I want to go, and you've also used the term brittle diabetic, um, and that kind of goes into the idea that people get a mindset about what they are and what's possible. And I've personally seen what's possible with people with type 1 diabetes, because the um, uh, the symposium that was held in Boca in
Mm-hmm.
2004 focused on type 1 diabetes, and there's all these people that I met who have type 1 diabetes who have absolutely taken control of their life, and they're living with healthy blood sugars, even though mainstream medicine doesn't really allow that as a possibility. It's more like management of a disease, rather than reaching the full potential that a person wants to achieve. Talk to me a little bit about what's possible, and your expertise and your ability to provide individual uh, care for these patients.
Yeah, thank you again. Yes, type 1 diabetes is they need more attention, and they need more doctors who are aware of how to tailor make the insulin prescription for that person. And it's absolutely true that there needs to be no brittle diabetes in society. If there is somebody who has very unstable, volatile glucose levels with type 1, that's just a mismatch where we have not taught this doctor or patient how to match the insulin to their life, whether it's the carbohydrates or it's the exercise. These are the two big, levers that somebody with type 1 has. They also can use other, like the stress management, the sleep, that applies, the fasting applies, but you need to be obviously under supervision when you're on insulin and trying to fast so that you don't drop into a hypo. But the big gap is if we're not helping people tailor their bolus, which is their quick insulin, to the food they eat. So the problem wouldn't be if someone's told take 5 units at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But what if they're eating different things every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Then some days they'll be high and some days they'll be low, depending on the flexibility that they need in their menu or in their life. So we have to reverse engineer this again. And that's where there are certain common patterns. But again, everything, the final solution for any individual is reverse engineered from their ground reality. Is let's look at how your body maps out for this insulin, for this food. And it is a bit numerical and mathematical initially to figure out what we call an insulin carbohydrate ratio. But again, when someone goes low carb, we're talking about small units of insulin. And we had a podcast where I invited Andrew Kutnick on for him to address my audience. And he is a champion. The way he manages himself on a low carb lifestyle with minimal insulin, almost on pediatric doses of insulin. He's a really fit, active, tall man, but he needs insulin doses in a pediatric range because of how well his body responds to those micro doses. And he uses exercise to keep his levels stable. I've had patients in India who would go from a 40 to a 400 in milligrams per deciliter within one day, where if the advice was, if it's low, eat some chocolate. If it's high, poke some insulin. That was the level of intelligence being used. And that's really unfortunate. That's just inappropriate for us to only think that far. We have to get to the root cause. I'm all about let's get to the root cause of that low, let's get to the root cause of that high. And instead of being reactive, where we're just chasing it once it does something, let's anticipate. The same way the body has a circadian rhythm where it has a sleep pattern, it has a digestive cycle, it has a clock. The same way insulin responses can be on pretty much there is a clock involved, and your body will do predictable things even in the scope of type 1 diabetes management. So we have to help people figure out their body patterns.
Now, I just want to get your thoughts about, back to your book, the facts are pretty grim with respect to metabolic disease, especially in America. I know that it's probably pretty bad in India as well, and globally it's a crisis. Where this book is specifically mentions type 2 and type 1 diabetes patients. How would it apply for people that have prediabetes, which is a huge and growing number of people? I would suspect that all of these principles, or most of them in your book, could probably help people from ever becoming type 2 diabetic. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. So the entire section, the first five, so the four wheels plus the fasting would be safely applicable to someone with prediabetes who's not on medication, who just wants to turn it around. As long as their blood test shows that their pancreas has not failed and they're not on their way to pancreatic failure, which means type 1,
Mm-hmm.
as long as their pancreas is working over time and we can see that there's high insulin, there's high glucose and high insulin, this pancreas is working hard to prevent high glucose. We need to help that pancreas turn things around. So someone with prediabetes for sure can turn things around and put it into remission. I'm a prediabetes remission case myself.
I only wish that my younger brother, who is now, he's actually on kidney dialysis because he developed type 2 diabetes more than 20 years ago, and he did not get the education that you would find in this book. He did not, the education was very minimal, and it's just difficult to watch. And it's very difficult to know what to do once a person is, going to dialysis 3 times a week, and doesn't have the use of their kidneys. Basically, a kidney transplant is the only next step that can make life better. And it's certainly, from what I've learned from reading books like this, that you can take control and put it in your own hands and avoid that situation entirely if you take the right action today.
Yeah, and sadly, Chris, I always feel bad when I hear something like that in a person's life, and that's what we're trying to prevent. But sadly, not everybody is saying what you and I are saying on this conversation today. There is still big mainstream advice and guidelines pushing in a carbohydrate predominant, more than half of your energy coming in from carbohydrates type of mentality. And the minute we do that to someone with diabetes, we are going to have to chase them with medication indefinitely. There's no turning it around if you do not reduce your carbohydrates. I just haven't seen it happen. And there might be variations of that where someone says, I went vegan, I didn't go carnivore, I didn't go keto, I went vegan and I turned it around. Fair enough. But by going vegan, they probably knocked off a bunch of processed, unhealthy food, especially processed carbohydrates, to go on a more like a whole food plant-based. So I think people need to be aware of their intake. If they're not even tracking what they're eating and they're taking, I don't like to say this, but sometimes the scientific guidelines have not done people justice. And you would hope and trust that our public guidelines, public policy is giving the audience the right advice, but I cannot say that that's true for diabetes for sure. So it's hard because the doctor may not go against what is in the guidelines because they don't want to get into legal trouble that they didn't follow standard of care. But the good news is it's in the fine print now in standards of care that it is okay to reduce carbohydrates. If you can sustain it, it's a powerful way to improve your diabetes with less medicine. That's in writing now in the American Diabetes Association guidelines.
Yeah, so important. Let's well, one more thing I want to say about the book. I did read that it was endorsed by Dr. William Miller, who's a co-founder of Motivational Interviewing, which says a lot about that aspect of the book. And I love the way the um, the wheels that you've described are integrated with the more psychological parts of the process, because it's so much more than just a list of
Mhm.
recipe things that a person has to do. The person has to, as you just mentioned, be able to sustain it. And
Mhm.
we all are familiar with the move more and eat less approach, which I, as a obese person, tried that as the sole ingredients to lose weight, and I successfully lost. I shouldn't say successfully. I lost 55 pounds doing it that way, but it wasn't sustainable. And over and over and over. And that's the kind of mentality that gets people into what you were saying before about I never,
Yeah.
I can't, I fail. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Looking forward to August with the Symposium for Metabolic Health put on by Low Carb USA and the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. It's going to be August 14th to 17th, and you're going to be doing a presentation that's going to involve motivational interviewing, and I think it's going to be a workshop style presentation. Can you describe a little bit about why someone might want to get a plane ticket and get there to San Diego to be part of this?
Well, I'm getting my plane ticket coming all the way from India to do this. So I'm very excited to do it. I've seen that this topic has been received very well. I've done it in different formats both times. Once was a remote grand rounds, and then once was when I was physically there last August, and we had the session, the didactic session, and then we had a brief 5-minute real play where someone from the audience came up and she volunteered to do a 5-minute motivational interviewing session with me on stage. And people were really shocked at where it went so quickly in 5 minutes. It was very deep and very powerful for me as well. People, in fact, came up and asked me that, did you know what she was going to tell you? Did you have this planted or rigged in the audience? And I said, absolutely not. I had no idea she would go and feel so safe with me on stage. And it was almost like the audience disappeared and she and I were literally connected and having this deep conversation. And I did go up to her after and make sure. I was like, are you okay? Like, you shared so much, and are you fine? And she said, yes, I felt seen, I felt heard, and I feel like it's helped me to move forward in my journey. So people really liked it, and a lot of questions came about how can we learn this, and knowing how life is. Most of us went back from that workshop last year and went back to our careers and our families and our lives, and may not have had the chance to be trained in this. So Doug and I spoke about, let's make it experiential, the same thing. Let's bring it home to everyone in San Diego and have the 90-minute session that I have, if I take away, talk time plus question answer, merge it into a big chunk of time and create small groups and give them little things to do in 5-minute breakout rooms almost, but in the same hall where they're doing little activities that I'm going to give them. And then we debrief and we take turns and have them feel how it feels to talk like that. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome. And I think it's going to be such a great thing for people that attend the event to get to be a part of. I want to let people know that you can find the event at lowcarbusa.org. And I also want to let people know that you can save 20% on tickets, CME credits, which are optional, and the low carb meals, which are fantastic, and they're eaten under the stars outside. And you're sitting at tables with other attendees, with presenters who are part of the conference. It's a fascinating experience, and you can save 20% with the iFix Hearts code. So if you use iFix Hearts when you go to order, you can save 20% off of the meals, the tickets, and the CME credits. Just wanted to encourage people to do that. And let's see. I'm fascinated by this conversation. I have plenty of time. If there's anything else you'd like to talk about, anything you think is important, anything you'd like to leave the audience with, whether it's an individual who's stuck, who just wants the power, the next step that they can take to get on the right track, and then maybe if there's someone that you love that isn't listening to your advice, anything that you can think of that will help someone that's stuck.
Yeah, let's go with the last question first. Is if you see someone that's stuck, and we all see people like this in our lives, and it's somehow really easy, right? It's so easy for me to see where they're stuck. I might be stuck, but I don't see my own mistakes. It's much harder to look in the mirror and pick at my own shortcomings. It's so much easier to find faults in others. So we have to be careful with that. So maybe help them feel seen. And in motivational interviewing, there's something which I talked about last August that people really enjoyed listening to, was like we were saying, instead of the helper talking about change, we want the person whose health is at stake, we want them to be talking about change. So how do we create that tension and flip it? Is let's help them first see why they are stuck. So it's a very big part of motivational interviewing, is to show them that they are ambivalent, show them that they are stuck, that I can see how on one hand you feel that you need and you deserve that bag of donuts at the end of a work shift. And on the other hand, you're telling me about it in this meeting because you're also worried about your diabetes and you don't want your organs to get affected. And so you feel two ways about it. And that's normal. To feel two ways about your own diabetes is normal. So when you just do that much and leave it there, they feel seen. Instead of feeling judged and feeling bad about the donuts, because that's what they're doing in their head, and that's what society's always doing to them, is guilting them. Now they feel seen. It's neutral, it's non-judgmental. And there's also a tone in which we are trained to speak with MI, is be careful with using question marks because they can sound a bit sarcastic. So if I was to say, you want to eat donuts and you still want to fix your diabetes? So I end it with a question. It sounds really like I'm taunting them. Versus, okay, I see that you really love the donuts and you want to fix your diabetes. Full stop, period. Right? So the sentence has a downward inflection with the voice. So I'm not getting excited with that information. I'm just pushing it down so that they can keep it at a neutral ground level. And the other thing you want to do is, like, even when you asked me these two questions, I grabbed the most recent question. I'm trying to remember the question that was previous to it, right? So the same thing happens in MI, is if I say, you want to fix your diabetes and you love the donuts, you're probably going to start talking about the donuts. So if I say you love the donuts and you want to manage your diabetes, now it's like musical chairs. That's the baton or the relay that I gave you, is I'm being strategic about my word, spacing and pacing. I'm giving you what I want you to pick up as the last thing I said and carry the conversation from there. So that's like a rhythm to think about. And in your loved ones, just let them feel seen. The other thing about diabetes specifically is it's a very big topic. And you'll see with the book also, there's small slices of topic. Each sub-chapter is 2-3 pages where you can go in for a specific thing, scan through the book, pick up that thing, go read it, and come back. It doesn't have to be a novel that you have to go only front to back. I mean, it helps when you go in order of the wheels, nutrition and then sleep, like that. But you could still dip in and out of this book and get one thing answered at a time. Because diabetes can be overwhelming. It's a really big mountain to climb. And it helps to break it down into small steps, step by step, baby steps. So logging your information. I use an app with my patients because sometimes they just don't have reality. They don't know what the numbers are. They don't know how to count. They don't know what to do. They just see the high glucose and it makes them nervous. And they don't have any power on what to do with the information. So use information in baby steps and track it, log it. So information is power against an invisible killer. We call diabetes a silent killer. It can, knock us down before we can feel it causing the harm, which is one of the problems with diabetes. If it's a fever or a toothache, I go in right away. But diabetes doesn't give us those fevers or toothaches until it's very advanced. So it's about breaking it down into manageable bite-sized pieces of data.
Speaking about information, I just was curious about your thoughts on the CGM, continuous glucose monitor, and the value that it can have, not only for type 2 diabetes patients or type 1 diabetes patients, but also for those that might be pre-diabetic. What are your thoughts on the CGM and the value?
I love CGM. I've worn it. I have reversed my pre-diabetes. I'm, as of now, normal. My HbA1c is 5. It has been for a decade. But whenever I've worn the CGM, I can see that I am a pre-diabetes reversal case, because when I eat something high carb, I just see big mountains, and so my tolerance for carbohydrates is not great. So I don't engage. I have them once in a while for fun when I really want. Mango season in India. We love our mangoes, really tastiest in the world, I think. And so it's fun, but I know how much to have and then be like, okay, that's good. I'm done now, and have that balance with my favorite comfort foods. CGM helps me know what my body's able to do. It does not substitute for an actual glucometer prick. It's not always as accurate, especially when it's very steep, going up
Hmm.
very fast or down very fast. You can have more error. So I wouldn't use it to make a dose decision or a treatment decision. I would use it more like looking for pattern recognition. And if I wanted accurate numbers, I would use the finger prick, both for prediabetes type 2 or type 1.
Oh, great. And going back to something you said about um, the guidance that we get from mainstream, and how it seems like parts of our system are kind of stuck in um, basically bad advice with respect to carbohydrates and recommendations. Do you have any thoughts on why um, the with all the knowledge that we have about controlling blood sugars and the value of therapeutic carbohydrate reduction, what is the resistance? And I think some of those answers are obvious, but I'd love to hear it from you.
I know we all love that conspiracy theory. I have to say, I think that there is a pharmaceutical agenda to keep people on medicine. There is a lot of profit to be made, and as obvious as it is that type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance and all of its related metabolic conditions can be turned around by lifestyle changes, I don't see the mainstream push backing it. I see more and more advertising for lifelong prescriptions, and I don't find that to be the right message. It's devastating, I think, that we've gone this way where we're asking people to consume the foods that make them sick and then consume the medicines that they're never going to get off of. We are, as a race, we are being conditioned to think we are always going to be addicted. And there's a word like food noise. I'm very upset that such a word has been marketed at people by the GLP-1 companies. I think it's very inappropriate to do that. It's a thought. It's a thought about food. It used to be a craving, it used to be a thought, and now we're calling it food noise that needs to be medicated. In psychiatry, you can have auditory hallucinations. This is not what we're talking about. This is not a psychiatric disease, but they're saying it in that way, and I feel discomforted by that. Is there an audience where people need the GLP-1s? Sure, I work with people who need it, who've benefited from it. They come to me with the idea of, how do I get off of this? I don't want to be on it lifelong. But the industry wants you to think about being on it lifelong. We don't have enough data to say that it's okay to be on it. And people don't want to be on this lifelong. So it's kind of, society's rushing towards a place that has no solution when we run like this with prescribing it to children. We're not doing right for society and for the next generation. So there's a deeper problem in society. But these are big questions, right? I just went to medical school. In second year medical school, I memorized pharmacology. There was nothing about lifestyle change in my books. I had to go out of my way in my 30s to go find it. And even now, I'm not in a majority. I'm still in a minority. So at every level, we're failing to do this in a bigger way. So it's a
Uh,
good thing what you're doing.
One more, GLP-1s. I'm glad you brought that up. Do you have any thoughts on where we're headed with so many doctors prescribing GLP-1s to such large groups of people? Any fears about what the results are going to be? Because I think there's a lot of debate, and the narrative is that the drugs are highly effective. What are your concerns about what might happen if they become just sort of standard standard practice to anyone that's overweight after this goes on for a number of years.
Yeah. I mean, people deserve to get the treatment that they need, right? What I worry about is, has the doctor-patient conversation gone as far as it needed to before we resorted to that prescription? I think that's the gray area, is what are the inclusion criteria? How are you deciding this person will be a net benefit versus a net harm? And are we measuring long-term outcomes in this, in terms of the relationship with food, right? And at a biochemical level, if I wanted somebody's appetite to go down, because GLP-1s are, taking the market because of what they do for appetite and what they do for glucose levels. But if I could achieve the same thing with no prescription whatsoever, just by getting enough protein and healthy fat with no muscle loss, why wouldn't I offer that first? And I don't know, is it immediate gratification? Is it not empowering to people to not believe in themselves? There are some big philosophical questions that I have about this, besides the unknown long-term effects of muscle loss of appetite, paralyzing the small intestine, backing up of food contents. We don't know what this is going to do if your food that was supposed to leave the system is sitting around for longer than designed.
Thank you so much for that. I want to. This has been a fascinating conversation. First of all, I'm going to show that again. Turn around diabetes. Definitely worth purchasing. You can get it on Amazon, and I'm also going to put up. You can tell me where people can find you. I know that they can find a lot of your information on your website, and I put that on the screen. So if you go to, how do you pronounce that? What's the
Rayson.
ReisanHealth.com, and it's ReisaNhealth.com. And let's see, where else can they find you if they want to connect with you on social media?
Yep, I'm on Instagram with my first name and last name, and I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay, great. And before we go, I just want to let everybody know that if you want to contact us at ifixhearts.com, you can go to ifixhearts.com/talk to schedule a call with one of our team members, and you can learn all the options that are available at ifixhearts.com. We have cardiologist Dr. Philip Ovadia, nurse practitioner Lisa Simmons, and a staff of health coaches. And this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. I really appreciate everything you're doing. And I hope people, once again, go to lowcarbusa.org and buy a ticket to the upcoming symposium. Don't forget to use iFixHearts as the code, and you'll save 20% on your tickets, your CME credits, and your low carb meals. Thank you again, Dr. Sanghani. I really appreciate you making the time.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate yours as well.
All righty.
Okay.